Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're going to be diving deep into the power of thought with James Allen's As a Man Thinketh.
Oh, yeah. As a Man Thinketh, a classic.
This book has been around for over a century, and it's got this really interesting central idea. Our thoughts actually create our reality.
It's not like some mystical wish it and it will appear kind of thing, though.
Right.
It's more about how our thoughts kind of set off a chain reaction
Okay.
that impacts our actions and then our habits and ultimately our circumstances.
So it's like if I'm always thinking I'm never going to get that promotion, I might end up, without even realizing it, sabotaging myself. And then that just proves my own negative thought right.
You hit the nail on the head. Alan actually uses this great analogy of the mind as a garden.
Okay, I like that. A garden.
So you get to choose what seeds you plant, and those are your thoughts, and then you get to cultivate them.
Uh-huh.
If you neglect your mind garden, you're going to end up with a bunch of weeds, those negative thoughts and limiting beliefs.
Oh, I see.
But if you carefully tend to it, you can actually cultivate a beautiful garden, a garden full of success and happiness.
So if I want to grow a life that's full of success and happiness, then I need to be really mindful of the thoughts that I'm planting and weeding out those negative ones, right?
Exactly. And there's actually this line from the book that really hits home on that. Man is made or unmade by himself. In the armory of thought, he forges the weapons by which he destroys himself.
Whoa, okay, that's deep. I mean, it really makes you stop and think. It's like we hold the tools to either build ourselves up or completely tear ourselves down. And it all comes back to what we choose to focus on.
That's the core of it. You know, Alan isn't saying we need to try to control every single external event in our lives. I mean, come on, that's impossible.
Yeah, good luck with that.
He's saying it's more about getting control over your reactions
Okay.
and your choices, which ultimately steer your life in a particular direction.
And speaking of things we can't always control, the book also says that a lot of times our external circumstances mirror our internal state. Now, I'm a little unsure about this one.
Yeah.
Does this mean that if you're struggling financially, it's because you're thinking poor thoughts? Come on.
I know. It's a bit of a tricky concept, and I definitely don't think it's about pointing fingers at people for their situation.
Right.
Life is way more complex than that, but Alan brings up this really interesting point.
Okay.
He talks about this man who's poor, not just because he's lacking money, but because he avoids work and tries to deceive his employer.
So it's more about the thoughts and behaviors behind the circumstances, rather than saying your thoughts magically manifest poverty.
Precisely. As a Man Thinketh is all about taking control, not judging. It's about seeing that connection between your thoughts and the outcomes you see in your life, which then lets you make different choices.
Okay, that makes me feel a lot better about it. So it's kind of like acknowledging your thoughts have real consequences. And those consequences then end up shaping your future thoughts and actions, like this big cycle.
It is a feedback loop.
Right, a feedback loop. So that can either spiral you down into negativity and self-sabotage, or it can kind of lift you up towards a more positive mindset.
Yes, and that shift in mindset can honestly change everything.
And this kind of leads us to that next big idea, suffering. Now, the book views suffering as a sign that we're out of sync with this law of our being. I don't know if I completely agree with this part.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because Alan doesn't see suffering as something we need to avoid at all costs. He actually suggests it can make us grow.
That's an interesting perspective. So are you saying that all suffering is our fault then? I mean, really?
Not at all. Again, it's not about placing blame. It's about understanding that when we go through tough times, it often forces us to really look at our thoughts and actions and honestly refine them. Imagine it's like a fire that burns away all the impurities,
Okay, yeah.
leaving behind something much stronger and more resilient.
Okay, so I can see how going through hard times can force you to step back and say, okay, what am I doing here? What really matters? And then you make changes from there.
Right.
But that can be a pretty rough lesson to learn.
It can be.
I'm glad the book offers a bit of comfort, too. There's one line that says, blessedness, not material possessions, is the measure of right thought.
I love that quote. It reminds us that true fulfillment doesn't come from all the external things we achieve or collect.
Yeah.
It comes from aligning our thoughts with something bigger than ourselves.
So even when we face challenges, if we're thinking about something greater than ourselves, we can still find meaning and peace. That's such a powerful message for people who are struggling.
Absolutely. And it brings us to this really important idea, purpose. Alan believes it's crucial for directing our thoughts and actions. Without a purpose, he says our thoughts just kind of drift around aimlessly,
Right.
making us more vulnerable to worry and fear and ultimately failure.
So it's like setting sail without a destination. You're just bobbing around on the ocean at the mercy of the waves, right?
No.
But if you have a clear purpose, then it's like having a compass to guide you, even if the seas get rough.
Exactly. Even if that purpose seems small, just focus on it. And listen, even if you don't succeed right away, the mental discipline that you gain along the way is so valuable.
So true. It's about taking small steps, one at a time, without getting overwhelmed by the big picture. This actually reminds me of a tip in the book. Even if you're feeling completely scattered, just pick one thing you want to work towards, and then pour all your focus into that.
I love that.
No need to try and change everything at once, right? Baby steps.
Baby steps, small, consistent steps taken with intention, those can lead to such amazing results.
Over time.
Over time, yes. Alan actually makes this point pretty clearly. He says, thoughts of doubt and fear never accomplished anything and never can.
So basically, ditch the self-doubt and go for it. But I'm curious, what happens when you do manage to link your thoughts to that clear purpose? The book claims that thought actually becomes a creative force.
Now we're getting to the really exciting part.
Okay.
Alan believes that when you combine clear intention with really focused thought, you actually tap into this powerful energy that can help you achieve almost anything. It's a powerful concept.
I'm intrigued. The book also says a man's worldly success will be in the measure that he sacrifices his confused animal thoughts. Hold on, isn't that a bit extreme?
Yeah, I see what you mean.
Does that mean we have to become completely selfless to be successful? I mean, really, is that what he's saying?
That's a great question, and I can see how that statement could raise some eyebrows.
Yeah.
I don't think Alan is saying we need to completely deny ourselves. It's more about finding that balance, I think.
Okay.
Finding that sweet spot between, those basic instincts we all have and our higher aspirations. Because remember, you're not just one or the other.
Gotcha. So it's not about erasing all self-interest, but more about channeling it in a way that aligns with your purpose and values.
That's a great way to put it. You are this complex being with both selfish and selfless impulses.
Right.
And the key is to really cultivate those thoughts and actions that actually support your goals while minimizing the ones that hold you back.
Okay, that makes a lot more sense. So we've got this idea of thought as a creative force, and it's got to be linked to a purpose.
Right.
Now, where do visions and ideals fit into all of this?
Well, Alan believes our visions and ideals aren't just wishful thinking. They're actually blueprints for our future. They're not just fantasies. They're the seeds of what could be.
And he uses some pretty big examples in the book, like Columbus imagining a new world,
Yes.
and Copernicus picturing a wider universe, and Buddha's vision of a spiritual realm.
He sums this up perfectly by saying, dream lofty dreams, and as you dream, so shall you become.
It's pretty powerful, this idea that our dreams can actually become blueprints for our future. It makes you wonder how much power we really do have to shape our reality.
More than you might think.
This sounds like a lot of mental work, though.
It is. It's a lot to process.
It is, and that's where I think the importance of serenity comes in.
Yeah.
Alan sees having a calm mind, or serenity, as a sign of wisdom and as a key to really mastering our thoughts.
And it has some surprising benefits. He actually points out that calm people are often more successful
Okay.
because other people trust them and rely on them more. Who wouldn't want that, right?
That's a great point. Being able to stay calm under pressure is a huge asset in any part of life. And he reminds us that serenity is way more valuable than material possessions.
Okay.
And that's something I think a lot of people struggle with these days.
Absolutely. And to emphasize this, he ends the book with this powerful call to action. Say unto your heart, peace, be still.
It's a beautiful reminder that we can actually quiet that inner turmoil that we all have and cultivate that sense of peace within, no matter what's happening around us.
Exactly.
That's so important. I mean, that's a life skill everyone could benefit from, don't you think?
For sure. And it's a great segue into the next part of our conversation.
Okay, I'm ready. I'm ready to explore that a bit deeper. What do you think?
Let's do it. It really is a powerful idea, isn't it? Cultivating inner peace, that's a game changer. But I'm thinking about this idea that our thoughts shape our reality so strongly. Does that then mean that people who are going through really tough stuff, are they to blame for their situation? I don't know, I'm a little hesitant about that.
Yeah, I hear you on that one. I mean, I was thinking the same thing. While I definitely agree that thoughts have a huge impact on our lives, there's also a ton of stuff that's completely outside our control.
Right.
I mean, what about genetics, right? Or even where you grew up, or systemic inequalities. I mean, it just feels wrong to say, think positive and all your problems will just magically disappear, doesn't it?
Yeah. We gotta remember, Alan wrote this over 100 years ago. Some of his views might feel, well, a bit outdated today. So yeah, we need to approach these ideas with sensitivity and a good dose of common sense, for sure.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, so how do we balance those two things? On the one hand, we've got the power of thought, but then we also have all these external factors that can really throw us off course.
It's about finding that middle ground, right? It's not about pretending that those external challenges aren't real. And it's definitely not about saying that positive thinking is some kind of magic solution. It's more about acknowledging that even with those limitations, you still have the power to choose. You get to decide how you respond to those challenges. And that choice, honestly, can make all the difference.
So it's not about just ignoring all the bad stuff and pretending it doesn't exist, right?
Right.
It's more like, okay, I'm dealing with some tough stuff right now, but I can choose to focus on what I can control,
Mm-hmm.
my thoughts, my attitude, even my actions, even when things feel really hard.
Exactly. You're not a passive victim of your circumstances. You're an active participant. You have agency, even when things are really, really tough.
That really resonates with me, especially these days, because things can feel so chaotic sometimes, right? So to remember that you have that power over your own mind, I think that's a huge deal. It can help us feel more grounded and more in control.
I completely agree. I think that message is even more relevant today than it was back when Alan was writing.
Okay, so let's get practical here for a second. If someone's listening and they want to start using these ideas, where do they even begin? What are some first steps?
I think self-awareness is key. It's like, pay attention to your thoughts, notice your emotions, do this throughout your day, really observe those things. And as you do that, try to notice any patterns that pop up. What are the main thoughts kind of running the show in your mind? Are they positive? Are they negative? What's going on in there?
So if you're basically playing a mental highlight reel of all your worries and anxieties, then that's a pretty good sign you need to do some mental decluttering.
All right. Yeah, exactly. Once you're more aware of your thought patterns, you can actually start to change them. And you can do that consciously. So when you notice yourself spiraling down into that negativity, just try to gently redirect your attention to something more positive. Think about something more productive.
It's like changing the channel, right?
Yeah,
If you're tired of watching the negativity channel, switch to something a little more uplifting.
exactly. That's a great way to think about it. Simple, but effective. And don't beat yourself up if you find yourself slipping back into those old habits, those old patterns. Because, it takes time and effort to reprogram your thinking.
It does. It's like building a new muscle. The more you use it, the stronger it gets.
That's a great analogy. Another important step is focusing on your purpose. Like, what are your big goals? What are your dreams? What are those things that light you up? When you have that clear sense of purpose, it helps you align your thoughts and actions with those goals, and it can really make a difference.
And even if those goals seem huge, almost impossible to achieve, remember, it's all about those small steps.
Yeah.
Like what's one tiny thing you can do today to move you closer to where you want to be?
Yeah. Small, consistent action, but it has to be fueled by that clear intention. That's the magic combo.
And then when you actually make some progress, even if it's tiny, you got to celebrate that. Those little wins, they keep you going. They keep that momentum going.
Absolutely. It's like giving yourself a mental high five for every step in the right direction.
Love it. Okay, and what about the power of visualization? Curious about that.
That's a big one. Create a crystal clear mental picture of yourself actually achieving those goals. Don't just see it, feel it. Feel those emotions, those sensations. What will it be like when you get there?
It's almost like creating a movie trailer in your mind, a trailer for the life you want to live.
That's exactly it. And when you repeat that visualization over and over again, you're actually imprinting that desired outcome on your subconscious. You're making it so much more likely that it'll become your reality.
So we've talked about self-awareness, purpose, taking action, and visualization, all really important stuff. Is there anything else from As a Man Thinketh that we should touch on before we wrap up?
We can't forget about the power of gratitude. When you really focus on the good things in your life, no matter how small they are, you actually shift your energy. It's like you're setting yourself up to attract more positivity.
I've heard that before. It's like that saying, what you focus on expands. If you're constantly looking at everything that's wrong, you'll probably see more things going wrong. But if you focus on what's good, then you'll start to notice more of those things too.
That's the idea. And gratitude isn't just about feeling good, which is great. It actually helps you see challenges differently. You can see them as opportunities to grow. When you go through tough times with gratitude, you're more likely to see the lesson, the positive side in that experience.
So even when things are hard, there's always something to be grateful for. And finding those things can totally change how you go through those challenges.
Absolutely. And remember, a positive mindset doesn't mean you're denying the hard stuff. It's not about pretending everything's perfect. It's about choosing to focus on the good, even when things are tough, and having faith that things will get better.
You know what? This reminds me of a quote from Viktor Frankl. He says, between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom.
Ooh, that's a beautiful quote. And it really gets to the heart of As a Man Thinketh, doesn't it? It's about realizing that we have the power to choose how we respond to everything life throws at us. And that choice, that determines where our life goes.
So even when we can't control everything that's happening around us, we always have that control over our inner world, over our thoughts, our beliefs, our attitudes. And that's where we find true freedom.
Exactly. And when you cultivate a positive, empowering mindset, it creates this ripple effect. And that goes way beyond you. It influences the people around you, and it can even make a difference in the world at large.
I love that. It reminds me of that saying, be the change you want to see in the world.
Yes. Which leads to a really interesting question that the book doesn't really answer directly. But it's definitely something worth thinking about.
Oh, lay it on me. I love a good thought-provoking question.
Okay, here it is. If we all create our own realities with our thoughts, what does that mean for our responsibility in creating a better world? I mean, do we all share that responsibility?
Hmm, that's a really big question. So are you saying there's some kind of collective consciousness, like we're all contributing to it, and our individual thoughts and actions, they can actually influence the direction of society? Wow. If that's true, then we definitely have a responsibility to be mindful of the thoughts we're putting out there, don't we?
It's a fascinating idea. What if we all of us, really committed to having more positive, more compassionate, more constructive thoughts? I mean, could we actually literally think our way to a better world, a world with more peace, more justice, a more sustainable world? Might sound a little too idealistic, but
But what if it's true, right? If our thoughts really are that powerful, then that's a pretty amazing and hopeful idea, isn't it?
it is.
And I think it speaks volumes about this book, As a Man Thinketh. The fact that it's still sparking these conversations after all these years, I mean, over a century later, it's pretty incredible.
It is. And, even though As a Man Thinketh is really focused on the individual, I think there are a lot of really great insights there about how to create a better world for everybody.
Right. I mean, what if everyone took responsibility for their own thoughts and their own actions? Wouldn't that automatically create a more peaceful, more compassionate world? Like, what if we all stopped blaming everyone else for our problems and started working on cultivating our own inner peace?
I think it would be a completely different world, honestly.
I know, right? It sounds utopian. But isn't that something worth striving for? Maybe As a Man Thinketh can be our guide for how to get there, both individually and as a society.
I agree. It's a powerful reminder that we each hold the power to create a better world. And it starts within. When we change our thoughts, we change our lives. When we change our lives, we can change the world.
Okay, so before we wrap up our deep dive into As a Man Thinketh, I want to leave you with one last thing to think about.
Mm,
What if you could choose just one idea from this book to focus on this week?
mm.
What would it be, and how would you use it to create a positive change in your life?
That's a great challenge. I'd pick this one. Calmness of mind is one of the beautiful jewels of wisdom. I try to really cultivate that serenity, that calmness in my life, especially when things get really stressful. And I'd remind myself that I have the power to choose how I react to any situation. And that reacting with calmness and composure, that's always the strongest choice.
That's so true. It's easy to forget sometimes, but even when things are super chaotic, we can always choose peace. We have that power within us.
And the more you work on finding that inner peace, the more you actually radiate it outward. And that can have a ripple effect on everyone around you.
That's such a good point. Well, on that note, we're going to leave you to think about that for a while, see how you can apply that to your own life. Thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive into As a Man Thinketh. Until next time, keep thinking, keep growing, and keep creating the reality you want to see in the world. It's amazing, isn't it, how this book, written so long ago, still feels so relevant today. It's like Alan could see into the future.
I know, right? And it's not just about personal growth. It feels like he's also giving us clues about building a better world for everyone.
Exactly. Like, what if we all really focused on mastering our thoughts and actions? Wouldn't that naturally lead to a more peaceful, more compassionate world?
Think about it. A world where everyone is focused on inner peace and well-being. Instead of blaming others for their problems, that would be a pretty radical shift, wouldn't it?
It would. It sounds kind of utopian, I know. But it's a vision worth working towards, don't you think?
Yeah.
And maybe As a Man Thinketh can be like a roadmap for how to get there, individually and as a society.
I think that's a really powerful way to look at it. The book reminds us that we all have that power to make a difference, to create a better world. And it all starts within each of us.
Right. Change your thoughts, change your life, change the world.
Exactly.
Okay, so before we wrap up this deep dive into As a Man Thinketh, I have one final thought for everyone listening. If you could choose just one idea from this book, just one, to really focus on this week, what would it be? And how would you use it to create a positive change in your life?
That's a great question. You know what? I'd pick calmness of mind as one of the beautiful jewels of wisdom. I'd really focus on cultivating that serenity in my everyday life, especially when I'm feeling stressed or things get a little chaotic. And I'd remind myself constantly that I have the power to choose how I react to any situation, and that reacting with calmness and composure is always the most powerful way to respond.
I love that. Such a great reminder. Even in the middle of all the craziness, we can always choose peace. We really do have that power.
We do. And the more you work on finding that inner peace, the more you actually spread it around, it has a ripple effect that can impact everyone around you.
Well said. And on that note, we're going to leave you to think about that, see how you can bring that into your own life. Thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive into As a Man Thinketh. Until next time, keep thinking, keep growing, and keep creating the reality you want to see in the world.